one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Hello everyone and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your source for the best in RPG interviews. My name is Ryan Howard, I am your host and king of the boneheads, and joining me this evening is someone from yet another 6 Degrees of Rollin' Bones connection that was made just over the past few weeks. He's got a campaign coming up for a very fascinating sounding game called Gun&Slinger. This is yet another Kickstarter episode, guys, so get ready to cover the mouths of your wallets as they scream in agony. Ladies and gentlemen, Nevyn Holmes.
Hey there, I'm Nevyn. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a game designer, web person, and I make cool games.
Absolutely. Rare Karma in the chat says howdy.
Hey, hey.
Sweet. So it looks like we've got a few people here watching live, here to, hear a little bit about this interesting game that's coming to Kickstarter later this week.
Yeah, it launches in 3 days. Oh God. kind of losing my mind a bit. So I guess do y'all want the elevator pitch on this, or where do I start?
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a second, but the way that I like to start the show, as any of you who've watched before know, I've got these questions here that I ask everyone because I find them fascinating. So we'll start right at the beginning. Nevyn, how did you get into role-playing?
It was actually way back in, it was either like late high school or early college. I had a group of friends at the time. I'm in connection with like one of them now. And I was just invited. They said, hey, we're playing this thing called D&D 4th edition. Come over and make a character. And then every weekend from then I played. I actually fell out of it for a while after a few games with them and got back into it recently in a ridiculously big way. At the start of 2019, actually. So I've only really been back into it for like a year, and I have just held my breath and dove all the way in.
Gotcha. Now, saying that you got your start with 4th edition, I know several of you are pulling your earbuds out and screaming as the steam comes out, but, every edition can be someone's first. I don't understand the hate for 4th because I've never played it, but get over that.
I have thoughts about 4th edition, and 3.5, and I have thoughts about D&D in general. We don't need to get into that right now.
Absolutely. So, of all the games that you played, just through all of your years of role playing, what has been your favorite?
I don't know if I can answer this. There's a lot of games that I really like, and they're all like, this is kind of a cop-out answer, but like most games that I play are my favorite for one reason or another. Like I played Echo recently. It's a game where you explore a landscape and describe the corpses of mechs. And that game was super, super good. I played J-Dragon's Wanderhome, which is super, super good. I played Slayers by Spencer Campbell, which is also super, super good. Like, I can't pick one. So I'm just going to submit those three for your consideration.
Gotcha.
And to my friends watching or listening to this, if I didn't mention your game, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And Vincify, again, another take that's going to make some people shout at the sky and shake their fist as they scream your username in agony. There's a lot of staunch second ed defenders. Again, never played it, have no nostalgia for it, but that is a spicy take.
I think I either have some first edition or second edition books actually in a shelf somewhere. And I have read through the older editions, and I mean, everything is somebody's flavor, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, going back to that 4th edition game that you played, do you remember that first character?
I remember my 3 first characters, actually. There was a homunculus with robotic legs named Zilch. There was an ice ganassi named Mar. And there was this one's my personal favorite, a fey-touched sorcerer named Karm. He had a pet rat and he was out for revenge, but ended up just being a good boy and couldn't do it.
Awesome. So, when it comes to those of us who, run a lot of games and stuff like that, are you kind of the forever DM of a lot of your groups? Is that kind of the role that you found yourself in over the years?
Thankfully, no. I actually have the rare privilege of being able to play as much as I run. Vincify in the chat is actually the DM of one of our games, and Dino Jam is in that game, and also my wife.
Sweet.
And just like all around kick-ass graphic designer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when you are running a game, a lot of us who, run games, we have this tendency to bring favorite NPCs along for the ride. So do you have a forever NPC?
I do. It's Karm. I bring him back in every campaign that I can. He has since retired from adventuring and owns a bookshop that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Nice. I too have turned my one of my first PCs into a forever NPC, so I'm right there with you.
It's a vibe for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when it comes to both being a player at the table and running behind the screen, how would you describe your play style?
It varies from game to game. I typically try to match the mood of the people that I'm playing with and the game that we're playing in. I'm definitely character focused, but I do love to get down and dirty with some action.
Nice. Gotcha. Now, this is a difficult question for a lot of people because those of us who dedicate a significant amount of time to this hobby. Thank you, Rectorships. I do, in fact, love my D20 Whiskey Stone as well.
It's pretty good.
Yep, absolutely. And it's currently at a 13, which is better than a 10.
Yeah, you're above average.
Absolutely.
That means it's like lukewarm, right? Mm-hmm. A little colder than room.
Yeah. This is a quick tangent. At my Wednesday game, there's this tradition that I kind of walked into when I joined the group. I'm now running for that group, but there's this tradition that I walked into where they have a giant D20 that is rolled at once per player at the beginning of every session called the Gravity Well.
Okay.
And the idea is that the higher the number, the more it will pull your dice towards that number. And so if it's a high number, supposedly there'll be higher rolls.
It's like a blessing or a curse kind of thing. I like that.
Yeah. And they have the Gravity Well, but me being behind the screen, I am not affected by the Gravity Well. So I have my own, that being my Whiskey Stone. So whatever's facing up, that is the GM's Gravity Well.
Excellent.
Gotcha. So this question, like I said, it's one that's difficult for a lot of people because there's so many great memories tied up at the table. But if you had to pick one that was a favorite memory or a fondest RPG memory, what would that be?
Um, this is a good one. Last year in October, my regular group, myself, Dino Jam, Vincify, and Vince's wife Sam, actually all went to a cabin in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. Like the closest town was like an hour away. Um, and this is like the end of October, the beginning of November, and I brought Will Yost's game Black Mass, which is actually played using tarot cards. And we waited until it was dark. We turned off all the lights. We played by candlelight. And we played this game of being young witches running into the woods of Salem by candlelight in the middle of nowhere. And it was incredible. Very, very good game.
Yeah, that reminds me, I had a guest on one time. The horror game where you use a Jenga tower. I just forgot the name of it. Dread.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was playing Dread with a group of people where the lights were turned off and the tower was over top of an oil pan. So when the tower fell, it made just like the loudest clanging noise possible.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I love that. A lot. I also hate it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah, that's like the best worst session ever.
Super good.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we have to go from the very highs to the very lows because we do share the table with all kinds of different people. Some of them we, bond with and they become our best friends. I know people from my D&D group were in my wedding.
Yep.
But some of them we just don't click with. Some of them we just don't get along with. And then there's a special class of bad player that's often referred to as that guy. So, Nevyn, if you have a that guy story that you're comfortable sharing on the air, please hold forth.
I actually, kind of. It's more like a self-acknowledgement. That foray group, that first play group, was filled with that guys. There were a couple like genuinely very good people in there, but myself and the majority of that group we were that guys. It was tropey. It was our first game. We were young dudes with a lot of anger about stuff, and it came out in play. Even as a GM, I was that guy for a while. I had a GM PC, and not in like the good, cool way. It was bad. I had a 3.5 railroady campaign with awful puzzles, and I was that guy, and I'm very glad to say that I am no longer.
Good. Awesome. Confessions of a Former That Guy, the Nevyn Holmes story.
I'm not going to write that book, I promise.
Gotcha. Well, now we come to the last of these introductory questions. This one has flummoxed a lot of people, and I'll tell you the answer can be as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. But Nevyn, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
I'm really glad that this question exists because I get to reveal a deep, dark secret finally for all. Rare Karma in the chat already knows. Corbin already knows. I actually, my favorite method of shit posting is to put garbage on t-shirts. I have many, 4 that are saved, but I have a long storied history of making awful t-shirts. I have one that's just a plain white t-shirt with black text that says Catholics love bones. I have another one that's got a buff Minecraft Steve on it, and it says Minecraft is a meritocracy and I'm winning. But I think if there's one shirt that I want to get printed, it's a maroon crop top with white text on it that says McCavity versus the Wolfman, who would win? It's a lot. There's also a yes, yeah, I'm sure, but we don't need to get into that.
Oh, that's great.
I told you.
Yeah, this is the question you didn't know you were preparing for your entire life.
Yeah, yeah. My entire from birth to now, this is what I've been living for.
And I love this question so much, and unfortunately, I can't take any credit for its creation because this is something that I brought over from a podcast I used to do, and it was a question my co-host would always ask, and it was kind of his question that he created.
It's a really good question.
Yeah, so I do it as a tribute to him, but that's fantastic.
Thank you, thank you. I'll exit stage left. You can back my game. That's time, right? That's all you needed.
Well, now that we are done with these introductory questions, we do, of course, need to talk about Gun and Slinger.
Yes.
The topic at hand here, launching in 3 days on Kickstarter. So, Nevyn, let's go ahead. Oh, thank you, Rectorship. So, now that we're here, let's go ahead and give me that elevator pitch for Gun and Slinger, and we'll proceed from there.
Let me just read this from this handy-dandy copy that I have written up already. Gun and Slinger is an RPG about a weapon and a wanderer. A maestro and 2 players, as the Gun and Slinger, set out into a dead planet mutated by a god's forgotten child and hunt strange bounties, investigate the world, and unlock hidden powers. During play, they seek to learn the nature of what's hunting the Slinger, figure out why the gun is sentient, and discover how the world died. It's a game that's really geared for short episodic sessions. I encourage people to play it in like seasons, and you can play it GM-less. Also, the core resolution system is Go Fish.
Gotcha. So it's not only a small group, it's a short time investment, and it's also a mechanic that people are already very familiar with.
More or less, yeah. I've actually found that a few people have never heard of Go Fish, so I am like writing out I've had to figure out how to explain Go Fish without saying, you play Go Fish. Come on.
That surprises me.
Typically, like the first session will last like maybe half an hour to an hour longer. But most sessions I've played in have been like 2.5 hours, and the longest quote unquote campaign has been maybe 3 or 4 sessions.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a really cool thing that you've kind of revealed to me there, because one thing that I find as a person who's now gotten super into RPGs, as my wife can attest from looking at the state of my office, there are a ton of games out there that are really cool, but the idea of getting 4 or more players together for any kind of campaign of anything other than either the big 2 D&D or Pathfinder is really a daunting task for a lot of DMs.
It is a lot. Thankfully, I am blessed with a plethora of people to ask, including my local playgroup, just like, hey, you want to play this? You want to play that? But it's definitely a big thing, especially since, like, I mean, people have this idea, right? A traditional game, a continuing game of something is years long if you can make it happen. And that's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
Not every game needs to be a forever game, and I try to keep that in mind when I design.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And now next we need to talk a little bit about your influences, because I'm hearing a lot just from that short little elevator pitch you gave there. So I'm hearing Western, specifically I'm hearing a lot of Dark Tower as well, but I'm also getting some vibes of, Dead Planet sci-fi and even a little bit of Star Wars in there. So what kind of inspired you to do this game, and what kind of inspirations are you drawing from?
So I've actually never read Dark Tower. I know nothing about it except that it's about a gunman. And there's a big tower in it that I'm assuming is dark.
Yes.
The idea for this setting is actually something I had when I was much younger and like just trying to write fiction. So the setting is like unique, but the inspirations for it, I've actually got some touchstones written down. Definitely Star Wars, like you said. Outer Wilds is a big one. Firefly, Trigun, those are all big ones. But we've also got Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, Pitch Black. Vin Diesel's Pitch Black is one of them. And Subnautica is actually one of them as well.
Huh. Gotcha. Yeah, that is a very top quality and also very eclectic mix of influences.
It's a lot. This whole setting is basically me just going, there's some things that I really like, so I'm just going to put them in here. And then I made it work somehow.
Absolutely. And then Gila RPG's Spencer in the chat is saying gun and man.
Yep. Spencer, that's going to have to be your hack that you make for this. You're not allowed to make anything else.
Yeah.
Gun and dude.
Gun and man. So, when it comes to kind of the Western influence, you mentioned this a little bit before we got on the air, but what kind of Western movies do you typically enjoy?
Oh, so many. I grew up on Tombstone, if that says anything.
Yes.
Tombstone's a big influence on a lot of what I like. Westworld also. Mostly season 1. I don't want to talk about season 2. Season 2 did some okay things. Anyways, there was another one, but I'm kind of blanking on it right now, to be honest. But Tombstone's a huge one. Deadwood, that's what it was. Deadwood's a big influence.
Gotcha. Elfie, I need you to knock that off.
Does somebody here like Tombstone?
Well, okay, so Tombstone is like my 1A or 1B, depending on how I'm feeling, favorite movie.
Hell yeah! There we go!
I have forced Elfie on at least 2, maybe 3 occasions to sit through that movie with me, and I think she's fallen asleep every single time.
It's not an action movie. Not really.
No, it's not. And I have to grab these now because I don't know if you know this, but Gunfighter's Ball has a line of Tombstone miniatures that are actually like the historical figures, because you can't copyright historical figures.
Interesting.
And so I've got painted here, and this never works when I do it on the podcast, but I've got Curly Bill Brocious.
Oh, look at that! That's awesome.
I've got Johnny Ringo.
Hell yes, this rules.
Doc Holliday. Let me hold him up here.
The one, the only.
Yep.
The tuberculosis man.
Absolutely. I've also got Virgil Earp and Texas Jack Vermillion painted.
Absolutely.
But I have the whole set, so I've still got Morgan and Wyatt.
Oh, I remembered. True Grit, the newest True Grit.
Yes, that's a fantastic
so
movie.
Good.
Absolutely. And I love the old True Grit too, because I grew up, my origin story with Western movies was I used to get terrible fevers as a kid. When I would get sick, I'd run 105 fever and kind of be out of commission for like 2 days.
That's a lot, yeah.
And so one time my mom took me to the library and said, you're really not feeling well. You're going to be on the couch for a long time. Let's get you some Western movies to watch. And the library had all these old cowboy movies on VHS. And so I kind of worked my way through John Wayne's kind of greatest hits. And so True Grit was one of the first ones that I watched.
That's good. That's excellent. I still need to go back and watch the original, but there's too much media to consume and not enough time to do it in.
Absolutely. But yeah, that Jeff Bridges reinterpretation, because it is an adaptation of a novel, that's a very good movie. And I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan as well, so that's definitely, yeah, I love that movie.
It's good. It's good.
So when it comes to, you know, building this game around kind of the Go Fish mechanic, where did that kind of fit into this this conception of the RPG?
So it actually started as a shit post, like all the best of my games. There was some game jam that was going on where you basically put in the titles of all of your games, and it Talk to Transformer is what it was. You put in the titles of all your games and it spits out a list of new titles for your next games. And Your Gun is a Gunslinger was one of them. And originally it was going to just be Go Fish, just be two people, and it was going to be about a gunslinger fighting against their gun in a shootout. And then I just kind of had a realization that using Go Fish as a resolution mechanic could be much cooler than just that. And I just kind of started playing with ideas and figuring things out, and it sort of just made itself as I worked on it more. There hasn't been a lot with this game that I have sat down and really struggled to create or to do right. It's kind of just happened. And there's been a lot of like going back and tweaking things to make them better or to make them fit more, but it really is just kind of a thing that happened and happened right.
Gotcha. Now John V. Page in chat, John is the composer of my theme music. He's mentioned that he scored a Westworld scene for a competition. So I just have to know, John, did you win?
It's a very important question, actually.
Yes. And also, was this Westworld the TV show, or was this a scene from like the Westworld movie from, I think it was like the early 90s?
It's older than me, for sure.
Yep, me too. So...
1973.
1973, I was way off. Oh my goodness.
You were way off. It's definitely older than us.
It's probably older than everyone watching this right now.
I may know one person who it's not older than.
I mean, I know several people who it's not older than, but as far as like the demographics of this show, okay, Rectorship.
Oh, definitely.
Rectorship apparently was alive when this came out. So
wow.
Thank you for outing yourself there, Rector.
Now I know who to call. Grandparents.
And apparently Heartbox Plus was alive.
No, she's not. That's my artist.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
I'm calling you out, Heartbox.
I'm just seeing a list of usernames here. I know who a few of you are. The rest of you could tell me that you're like, I don't know, Gandhi or Lizzie Hale, and I'd believe you.
Perfect. Good. Yes. I'm going to stop calling out the people that I know now so they can just go hog wild. But yeah, Westerns are pretty big influence. Originally, this game was going to be a Weird West game. Like just traditional Weird West. You got a Western stuff and you got some weird shit happening. But I actually decided to move away from it because Westerns aren't they don't have the cleanest history as a genre. And I also realized that by making a wholly unique setting, I could make it something very, very unique. Like a game that works within the setting and doesn't have to, or works with the setting instead of within the setting. So I've been able to do some very cool stuff by making something wholly unique.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one thing that I'll say about Western RPGs as a whole, and this is from my own personal experience of trying to run one, there are a lot of people who, when you say, hey guys, let's play a Western RPG, even if it's a Weird West game like Deadlands, one of my favorite games of all time, you say, let's play a Western RPG, and immediately everyone's like, hell yeah, I want to be a cowboy, or I want to be this or that, or this Western trope, or I want to do this. And then you actually get to the table for the first session, and immediately everyone's already over it.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
I think that what I sort of came to realize is that the things about westerns as a genre, pardon my speaking, that make this game interesting, or that like are important to this game, are coincidentally also like the least problematic and least boring of the aspects of westerns as a genre. People working together to survive in an environment that does not want them there being a key one. I've tried to pull in like some hopefulness, because that's something that's very key. Being on your own, being a survivor, those are all very, very important things to the genre and to this game.
Absolutely. And another thing that I think you've done well here is a lot of good westerns, especially, you know, if you're talking about the Dollars trilogy that Eastwood made, the kind of the pinnacle of his western career there. The sense of kind of lonesomeness or isolation, where it's you, or in the case of your game, you and your weapon against everything.
That's very important too. And I think that actually came very nicely from the mechanics of the game. Like it's a low player count game, which means it's a low character count, and that kind of ends up making it a very intimate and personal story in a really interesting way. Because it very much naturally evolves into a story about the relationship between these two characters, and also their relationship with violence. And that's something that's very interesting to explore. I do also want to clarify real quick. I don't consider Gun&Slinger to be a true like Western. I try to be like very clear about this. It's Western inspired. There are a few key aspects that I took and that I'm using here because they really make some themes in this game like really sing, but it's not like a Western.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really the main thing that kind of, it seems like, comes from that, besides the themes that you just discussed, is the concept of the gunslinger, which the name comes from. That's a very...
Yes, absolutely.
That's where that concept comes from. And how do you, in the game, how do you kind of play around with that trope and make it kind of a unique thing to your world?
It really is kind of in the title, but I've taken the two aspects that make a gunslinger, the gun and the slinger, and I've made them their own entities that they're very much like half of a whole. They're both whole characters. They both have plenty of capabilities and things that they can do, but when they are together, they sing and they change the world and they change each other. A gunslinger, the trope, the character archetype, all that stuff, is a person with a tool of violence, and they commit violence. They do violence sometimes with good aims, but there's always the bad gunslinger, right? And I've basically taken that and I've broken it down into two characters that each have their own struggle with different kinds of violence. And by working together, they can fight against that with each other, basically. It's a very thematic thing. On a mechanical level, the characters have totally different stats, totally different abilities, and different themes and dependencies on each other.
And one thing that you've also kind of brought in, and this is kind of leaving the Western stuff aside for the time being, you've brought in this role-playing game, not trope, but concept that I adore. One that was done to me not once, but twice in my two first games that I ever played in, and one that I continuously inflict upon my players, that being the sentient weapon. So,
It's so good.
yeah, what's been kind of your gaming experience before this with sentient weapons, and how has that kind of infiltrated your gaming life?
I I actually haven't been in a lot of games that have had a sentient weapon. My main exposure has been in like fiction and just stories and stuff like that. Like there are tellings of King Arthur's legend where Excalibur is a sentient weapon. There's the classical bardic singing sword.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is just a relationship to mythos. And I guess the way it, I don't know that it really relates too much with how I've represented it here. This is kind of just my own take on it. And it basically is just a character that asks the question like, you have not always been a tool of violence, but here you are stuck in a body of violence. How do you deal with that? How do you reconcile that with yourself, your past, and your own beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
And who does that make you?
Yeah, and that kind of aspect of who's controlling the weapon is something that I feel like makes a sentient weapon interaction in an RPG very compelling. This happened to me when the Cromwell McGwen, my PC that I fell in love with, and
Very good name.
thank you. He's the rangeriest ranger that ever rangered. He's Aragorn B1 Kenobi. I say this all the time. But one of the first things that happened to him as I was first learning the game was we encountered this villain who, in classic D&D fashion, the DM intended for this guy to be a long-term antagonist, and we killed him in the first boss fight.
Good. Yes. Love it. Don't make plans.
Exactly. But he had this weapon. It was a +2 longsword that basically was the form of a scimitar with a forked tongue at the end, which is actually like a weapon of Islamic mythology that the the DM had brought in. But it also split into 2 +1 scimitars, and I was a dual-wielding 2-weapon fighting ranger. So I see this, and immediately my D&D player lizard brain goes, "That's mine."
I know the feeling.
Yep. And no one else.
I've fallen for many a cursed weapon because of this.
Mm-hmm. None of the other players were like 2-weapon fighters, so they're like, "Yeah, it's yours. Go for it." And the DM was like, "Okay, you have to attune." He actually had a
You'll
good
have to
poker
attune
face.
for it.
He had a very very good poker face. I did not see this coming. Muhammad, you did a fantastic job with this. But he goes, "Well, you have to attune to it. It's a magical weapon." And I go, "Yeah, okay, sure. I'll take the 15 minutes and a long rest and attune to it." And he goes, "Make a wisdom save." And I fail.
No! Yes! Good!
And so for a solid 3 months of actual time, probably like weeks of game time, my character was just becoming more and more savage because of these long swords encouraging him to kill.
So good. Yes, good. I love it.
And this was a character who he was like the last heir of a like completely evil despotic empire that like crushed an entire region for generations, and so he was carrying around a lot of guilt about his past already. And then he's turned into a murder machine by these swords. So it became a very compelling part of the game. And then I turned around and did the same thing in my Dark Sun game to a Thrycreen barbarian who had fought his way out of the pit and earned his freedom.
Pretty good. I like it.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for this.
But you've got this interesting thing going on where it's not just a sentient weapon controlled by the fiat of the GM. It's a sentient weapon controlled by another player. So how, in your kind of playtesting, has that played out in game? And what does that end up looking like for Gun&Slayer? Or Gun&Slinger?
You mixing me up
Sorry,
with
Spencer.
Spencer's game. It's. I think that honestly, it's the only way that this could have worked. With the things that I have ended up exploring in this game. Mm-hmm. There's a key aspect of this game, and it's that the gun cannot be fired unless both the gun and the slinger agree. The gun does not need to be in the slinger's hand in order to fire, but they both have to agree. The gun is also not like completely helpless without the slinger. Mm-hmm. They make each other stronger, but the gun can still like move around the world. The gun can speak. The gun has more powers other than just shooting, and that's all done through like the character sheet and building a character and everything. But it has ended up playing out in wildly different ways in every playtest, actually. In one playtest, the gun was inhabited by a demon that was very much started off being like, hey, we need to kill to get what we want. We need to kill so we can save your family. And the slinger was like, I don't want to kill unless we absolutely have to. And it ended up with them coming up with much more unique solutions to problems. A lot of sneaking, a lot of lying, and a lot of bribing people, but it ended up being mostly nonviolent. And then we've had more action-y campaigns where the Wanderer was kind of a blank slate character, like your Fallout 4 protagonist style. Mm-hmm. And the gun was a trapped, like biblical Old Testament angel, like trapped in a gun. So very much about like fire and brimstone and vengeance and cutting a path. And that ended up being based on their characters, I made that a much more action-focused thing. And it ended up telling a narrative that leans towards, that side of the coin of the struggle between violence and not.
Gotcha. So when it comes to the different combinations, it doesn't sound like there's necessarily a class system, but is there like different archetypes of what the Wanderer and what the gun can be? Is that like in the book, or is that completely on the players?
There's some choices. During setup, I think right now it's between 25 and 30. I'm still working on it, but there's a big chunk of questions that everyone at the table answers together that defines aspects of the world and of the characters. And that includes like who you are and who you were before you two found each other. And then on a mechanical level, there are 3 stats that both characters start off with. I'm just going to use the gun as an example. Their starting stats are embodiment of magic, sharp for a gun, and just a little bit mean. But as you play and you gain braids, which are like the experience basically, you can give yourself new stats. You can just come up with a stat and put it in there. Like I had someone that gave their stat or their gun the stat. It was something like bullheaded with the best, and they basically used that to be a bit of flavor into the gun and a bit more of definement for the character. And they basically just used it when they wanted to be stubborn and like force their way through. If sharp for a gun is like quick wits, then bullheaded with the best is fuck brain, I'm gonna use brawn. You can also then shape, you get to pick like a magical ability that you have as a gun. Right now they are an agent of chaos and an agent of fury, and it's either make random shit happen or light shit on fire. But then beyond that, you get to pick a rune that is inscribed on the barrel of the gun, that actually shapes how you use magic. and that's like fury and fire, protection and peace, tricks and treason, strength and service, and a couple others. And those, like, all of it in combination is what gets you your archetype or your character class. And then as you level up, you further expand on these, and further define your truly unique character.
Gotcha. Cool. So yeah, I imagine that leads to several pretty interesting combinations, and the idea of kind of making your own stats is also super interesting. And
it's something that I really love doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm struggling to think of any other game that's doing something similar. The closest I can come up with is the Star Trek Adventure game has different, like, edges that you come up with a name from, like, a Star Trek episode, and you embody that particular sentiment of that quote. But that's even, like, what you're talking about is even a little bit deeper mechanically than even that.
Yeah, no, I basically just say, hey, make it whatever you want. Like, use this as an opportunity to give yourself more role-playing chances and, like, skill checks, because it's fun. Like, do what you want. I don't care. The game, you already have the game. Do whatever.
Absolutely.
I've explored something similar to this in another game of mine that's in development, Stand-ins for the Apocalypse. It's like a GM-less PBTA game, and there's a stat called motif. And you just define, using a few adjectives, your character's motif and what they are about. It's sort of a more guided approach to the same idea, but I love just letting people sit down and, after they've done everything, say, okay, what is this character really about, or what are they becoming about? Because I think it gives you a lot of really awesome opportunities to explore character development that games with your 5 strength decks, whatever, right? You don't get these opportunities a lot, and I want to make something that gives people these chances.
Absolutely. And Vince, if you're playing as a gun that used to be a cat, if it used to be one of my cats, then the gun will only fire if you don't feed, or if another cat is in the sunny spot, and then you'll also just sit on everything.
I'm here for cat gun.
Yeah, that could be interesting if done right. And I think
Absolutely.
Vince, I think you've got the right sentiment there, Vince. That could be pretty interesting.
I'm here for it.
But will you only speak in meows?
Please.
So
in and out of character.
Yes, absolutely. Now, when it comes to the actual Kickstarter campaign, what kind of stuff are you offering with kind of the initial pledges, and then what will stretch goals kind of look like for this campaign?
So I'm keeping it very simple because this is my first project that I'm doing like this.
Okay.
It's the first thing that I'm taking to Kickstarter. I want to keep it as simple to fulfill as I can. Our goal is $43.50. It's a regular 30-day Kickstarter. And the rewards that you can get, $12 gets you the full final color PDF. $20 gets you a full color paperback and the PDF. And if you really, really, really like my game, you can back it $100 and I will write a secret message in your physical copy of the game.
Nice.
Stretch goals, we have 2 stretch goals. The first one is by my wonderful, wonderful friend, Viditya Valetti, writer of Space Goblins, and Space Between Stars, and so many other amazing games. Spellcatex, God, Vid has not made a bad game. At $63.50, Vid is actually going to write a whole new playset called Sword and Bearer that comes with a new setting, setup section, 2 characters, and art by Nadir Noor. who is just absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 7250, Adira Slattery, the writer of Bad Moon, an all-around fantastic, fantastic person, is writing an alternate character called the Demon. And that's going to have art by Joseph Rahman and a special sigil designed by Ezra Rose.
Gotcha. Oh, and in chat, Dino Jam oh my goodness. That's brilliant. That's
Magic
brilliant,
T-shirt
Jam.
cannon and cheerleader. Hell yeah.
As a former school mascot, I have to give it to you. That's amazing.
You were a mascot? That rules.
I was in fact a mascot. I went to South Lake Christian Academy in Huntersville, North Carolina, and we were the Eagles, and for a couple pep rallies and a basketball game, I was Eddie the Eagle.
Pretty good.
Yep. And it was an interesting experience. It was fun, and I will forever, anytime at work when someone's like, "Oh, it's an icebreaker, you know, what's something fun about you?" I've got a handful that I can always break out. One, I trained as a professional wrestler, and two, I was a school mascot.
Both extremely good.
Yes. Looks like Dino is also a fellow former mascot. So
yeah, she's done some interesting things.
It's an interesting life. It really I say that like I did it more than 3 times, but it's that's 3 times more than most people.
You lean back and you light a cigarette and you just put your legs up on the ottoman and you go, "Let me tell you about being a mascot. I got some war stories."
Back in my mascot days.
Pretty good.
Absolutely. But yeah, as you guys can see from chat, there are limitless combinations for this game.
Absolutely.
Including a mystical t-shirt cannon, which
there's I did a thread on Twitter early on where I was just like, "Hey, give me names for gun-and-slinger hacks." And there have, to this day, I still get like absolutely incredible GNS hacks, usually as like shit posts from friends, but they're all very good.
Mm-hmm.
Witch and Craft being one of my favorites. Pirate and Ship is another really good one. Light and Saber is one that I'm very excited to see.
Mm-hmm.
There's pretty much like Chimney and Sweep. Like, you can do anything with this game name, and it's extremely good. Damn it, Emma. Damn you. Yeah, there it is. There it is. There it is. Poop and Butt, Shit and Post. Nevyn and Spencer.
Nevyn and Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Rollin and Bones.
No, that's good. That works.
All right. There we go.
One player is the host. One player is the interviewer.
That's great. Roll for t-shirt question.
Oh no, I don't have an anecdote.
It's a good thing I got a bonus to charisma here. That's a 1.
Oh no. Yeah, but games are good, huh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, one thing that surprises me, and this might be something that you might have coming down the line that we don't know about. I was hoping for sure that one of the stretch goals or a higher tier of donation would be a gun-and-slinger set of cards.
It's something that I thought about doing.
Okay.
And I had some ideas for how I would go about it, but the fact of the matter is, commissioning a deck of cards, a fully custom deck of cards, is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Because it's all of the art. I mean, it's 40-something completely unique pieces of art. plus whatever you do for the back design, right? It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And with Kickstarter, that in and of itself isn't necessarily something that makes it impossible. But beyond that, it's the logistics of actually shipping. I actually spent some time talking about this with Jay Dragon. They were kind of helping me get my sea legs, so to speak, when first starting this, and it's something that I really want to do. But in order to keep the scope on this small and digestible, and to help me not rip my hair out when it comes time for printing and fulfillment, it's just not something that's going to happen right now.
Yeah, understandable. Absolutely.
Maybe when I do the second Kickstarter for Bertrix's Guide to Nature, we'll see what happens.
Gotcha. Yeah, because even Pinnacle with their Deadlands Suede Kickstarter, they offered a deck of cards, but it was a separate like add-on. Not even, I think maybe the highest high level pledge got it, but even then, I think it might have been an add-on.
They've got experience and they know the logistics, and they have a budget beyond the Kickstarter. So I'm all for a Gun and Slinger deck of cards. It's just not going to happen right now.
Yeah, and what you said about the art is kind of like the big thing. And then another thing I imagine is just making it not look like crap on a card.
Well, there's artists who like specifically design playing cards. Like Nathan D. Paletta is someone who I know of that just does card art. You can commission them for full decks of cards. But there is like a whole unique approach to like it's not just that you have to put art on it, you have to put the art on there in a way that leaves room for the identifying info of the card. There's a whole lot to it.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Nathan. He'll be on in 2 weeks.
Damn. Speak of the devil.
Absolutely. I am a huge wrestling fan, so
yeah. Worldwide Wrestling RPG 2nd edition.
Yep, we'll be
I'm excited.
Holding forth on that and talking about all that nonsense. I love the chance to do that. I got the chance to talk about wrestling for an entire podcast with John Hambone McGuire from Vintage RPG, and that was a fun episode.
I bet.
So, when it comes to the scenarios and actually having a world to play in and an idea of what characters are doing, are there going to be any scenarios kind of in the core book, or is that largely going to be on the GMs to come up with as kind of the answers to the questions spring forth?
Yeah, a lot of the setup questions, I've designed them in a way that gives you all your plot hooks right there.
Gotcha.
The way that I playtest, especially with this game, is we do the setup and then we go from there. I actually encourage in the text, I encourage the play group to, before you actually set out into your world, after you've answered the setup questions and made your characters, I tell you to sit down as a group and figure out what you want the story to be about. What do you as a group want to explore? Do you want to focus on the gun, on the slinger, on the twist, on the mutants in the world? Like, what do you want to figure out? And then set a goal and then shape your game around that. I have examples in here of monsters and Magitech and all sorts of stuff. And I plan on adding a couple like, oh, there's some bandits, but here's the truth. Go check it out. Like simple scenarios, like a couple paragraphs at most.
Okay.
Because in my experience and from feedback that I've gotten of others playtesting it, it is not that difficult to come up with something. So I'm pretty confident in not having to write a whole bunch for it.
Gotcha. Gun and Slinger plan the perfect sleepover.
Yeah, can't wait to paint each other's nails.
Paint each other's nails while watching Tombstone.
That's it. That's a perfect date. I don't need anything else. I mean, they don't need it. The Gun and Slinger don't need anything else.
And if you don't feel like Tombstone, Sin City.
Pretty good.
Because that's the one that switches places with Tombstone.
I gotcha.
Every now and then
Depending
two,
on the mood,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I get it.
It's yeah. And unfortunately, Elfie, my wife, God bless her, has not seen the entirety of either, despite my best efforts.
You gotta start one and then wait until she falls asleep like halfway through. Switch it and then wake her up.
Yeah.
Well, she's in here, so damn it. Now you can't do that. I just ruined the perfect prank.
Yep, that's the master plan. Gone. Turn to ash.
Pretty good. Yep.
Shoot nail polish onto each other's toes. I don't.
Out of context, that's a real rough thing to read.
Yeah.
In context, I'm here for it.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out how, again.
At the sleepover, yes. Using probably water guns.
Mm-hmm. Or wasn't there a thing on an episode of The Simpsons that was like the makeup cannon?
It was a makeup shotgun.
Yep.
You happen to pull like one of the few Simpsons references that I know.
There we go. The Simpsons is evergreen.
Really is.
Absolutely. I don't know why they even bother to make new episodes of it, because the old episodes still are just as relevant as they ever were.
Gotta make that content.
Absolutely. So, I know with kind of the state of the world being what it is, there haven't been many chances to kind of promote this physically, but once conventions are kind of back up and running, is that something that you're interested in doing? Is, you know, taking this game convention to convention and running it for people?
I think that'd be fun. Yeah. I've thought, you know, as I've gotten more and more into game design, I've thought about going and doing that. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be a really interesting thing to see. But you know, once we return to normal, if ever.
Do you know Gun and Maggie?
Oh shit! I'm here for it.
Yeah. There we go. That might not even be a hack. That'll be
that's just core.
Second edition.
That's the game I'm releasing now. But yeah, I think it'd be really fun to take this game to conventions and see if people vibe with it.
Mm-hmm. Because it's an interesting thing. I know it would be a low player count for a convention game where you typically want to get a bunch of people around the table, but it would be super interesting just to see how three complete strangers bond with each other and accomplish this particular game that you've set forth here. And I feel like that would be a really interesting setting to give that a whirl.
Definitely.
And then the idea that if you brought it to Gen Con, you end up with, like, here's Matthew Lillard and here's Joe Manganiello, and now the three of you have to make an adventure.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. The astronomical odds that their schedules would line up just so.
Yeah, I've been told that this game kind of like tricks the more trad players.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that it's pitched seems like it's going to be very kind of traditional, kind of OSR. You come in, you roll dice, you go into dungeons, you fuck shit up, and it is not at all that. So it would be very, very cool to get some completely unsuspecting people and be like, hey, guess what? We're gonna talk about the emotions of violence. You want to shoot a spider dog? Go for it. How's it make you feel though?
Feels like an abomination of nature. I feel fine. I don't.
It was kind of cute.
A wolf spider, if you will.
Yeah. I see what you did there.
Yep. Again,
As a
unfortunately...
Texan, wolf spiders fuck me up.
Unfortunately, I can't take credit for that one because that was the first monster in the first session of my first D&D game.
It's a good monster.
Absolutely.
Just put spider legs on things that shouldn't have them.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. Oh, goodness. Spider and legs.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a GNS hack that requires 9 players.
Yep. Oh, that would be interesting. 1 for the body, 8 legs. You all have to form a consensus.
It's like Octodad, but you're playing Go Fish.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. So, kind of rounding things out, like we said, this is launching on August 13th, 3 days from now, as we're doing this live. Those of you who are watching it on YouTube or listening on podcatchers, you will have precisely 1 day before the Kickstarter launches, and you said it's going for a month?
Yes, 30 days.
Gotcha.
It'll end around my birthday, actually, so hopefully I get to celebrate.
Absolutely. And then from there, what kind of release date are you targeting? Is this going to be like an early 2021, or is this something that's kind of already written out so it can be out before the end of the year?
The game itself is almost text complete. I'm constantly going back and making changes, and there's a few, I feel, important things that I want to make sure are in there. But once I sit down and actually get my brain together and finish writing it, the text will be done pretty quick. I have written down March 2021 as the fulfillment date for physicals, but yep. I'm trying to do earlier than that. But I want to make sure that I give this team. I've worked with most of these people before, so I know that they're very good and very quick. But I want to make sure that we have enough time to do it right, and give it however long it really takes.
Gotcha. And then I know this is, way in the future once this thing is actually out and fulfilled. But when it comes to broader distribution, are you going to go through drive-through? Are you going to go through itch? What kind of ideas do you have for that?
I'm probably going to end up, it's definitely going to go on itch. That's where all my games are currently. I will probably put it up on drive-through. Just because you should have your big games on drive-through. And then beyond that, I'm not really sure. I haven't talked to him about it yet, but I'm pretty sure floatingchair.club is going to want to have a couple copies. Maybe Exalted Funeral will hit me up, we'll see. But not much plans. I'll probably do another print run if it goes gangbusters. But yeah, it's basically just like I'll release it where I release it, I guess.
Yeah. And that's, again, we're talking, 2021 at that point, so.
Exactly. I don't even know if 2021 exists at this point.
Yep,
so.
Absolutely. For some of us, it's a coin toss whether or not, next week exists, so.
Look, it's been a hell of a year this last week.
Absolutely. And fortunately, we have all of these great games that have been coming out to kind of help us get through it. So we're kind of up at the end of our time here, Spence, or not. Why do I keep saying that?
Damn, again! Oh my
Spencer. God, he's in my head. He won't leave.
I can't believe this.
Oh my God. One conversation, and you're just right there, right inside my head.
I can guarantee you, Spencer and I are gonna laugh about this for a while.
He's pulling the levers.
I've got a meme he made that I need to send you.
Nevyn.
Yes, that's me. That's my name.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even say I'm drunk. I've had 1 drink. What I do at the end of every episode is I like to give the guest time to promote anything that they've got coming up. So, obviously the Kickstarter coming out this week. Is there anything else that you kind of want to put out there?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you can check out the Kickstarter at bytes.rip/GNS Kickstarter. That's bytes.rip/GNS Kickstarter. You can check out my stuff at nevyn.games or at fork20.itch.io. I also I do a lot of stuff, like a whole lot of stuff. So if you just want to see everything that I do, you can go to nevyn.games, and then there's actually a link to my link tree on that page. I have a lot of stuff. I'm working on a few things on the back burner right now. Stand-ins for the Apocalypse is a GM-less powered by the Apocalypse slash belonging outside belonging game about being in a punk math rock band and saving your town from an apocalypse. It's very, very good and very, very queer and very, very music focused, and I love where it's going. Justicar is I'm still trying to figure out how to describe this. It's like an improv party game where you basically play like My Cousin Vinny or a Phoenix Wright court scene. You build a crime and then play the court proceedings together.
I love it. Those both sound amazing.
They are.
Awesome. Cool. Well, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Nevyn, this has been great.
This has been a blast. Thank you for having me.
This has been a ton of fun. Guys in chat, you were fantastic. Spencer, I would like control of my mind back. But thank you for stopping by regardless. So, guys, that's, like I said, that's going to do it for today's episode. Next week, thank you for releasing me, Spencer. Next week, we are going to kind of go back to the Savage Worlds type stuff. We are seeing the return of the legendary Carl Kiesler and his co-hosts from the Wild Die podcast. We'll be talking all things Savage Worlds. That'll be a ton of fun. And this Saturday on Danishes and Dragons, I'm being joined by my good friend David Lindsay. He just recently wrapped up his first foray into dungeon mastering. He ran Fandelver for a few friends of ours, and I want to sit down over breakfast with my good friend who I haven't seen in a long time and talk about this first campaign and what lessons he's taking from it. So that'll be Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central. Next week, same time as this week, we'll be talking to the Wild Die Pod crew. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and whether or not you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.